Hi, and welcome to the Target Individual Program, Target Individual Experience. Yes, we are in the Matrix, and it's time for us to wake up. Okay? It is time for us to. I'm gonna yet. I'm gonna let Master Yoda tell us what it is that we need to do.
Your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
Okay? We are educated into ignorance, educated into blissful denial of reality that we see in front of us. We have been hypnotized, okay, to not see the truth or recognize the truth. We have been brainwashed into a lower mental state. That is the majority of the population, particularly uh, within the United States. And if you don't believe me, go and do a search on the education level of the majority of Americans or those who live in America. And you will see almost half of Americans or people who live in America are basically illiterate or almost illiterate, meaning that they have a reading level below sixth grade, and this is adults. Okay, so why is that? Why is that? Well, one, in order for those in power to remain in power, they need an uneducated public, a populace. That way you can manipulate them, right? Tell them whatever you want them to believe, and they will believe it. Now, the other half who are educated know well enough that those in power will not let an educated population exist, right? They know this. This is why a lot of very well educated people do not vote. Because in every election, particularly every presidential election, when you look at the people that do vote and compare it to the population, the overall population of the United States, and I'm talking about those that are 18 and older, okay, the majority of people don't vote. They just don't. Again, I'm not making these things up. And so we have to understand why, right? Because those individuals, they know the truth. They know that whoever is put into office is only going to benefit those in power, the wealthy. Okay? Everybody else, we're given a little bit of crumbs to keep us happy, some more than others. Some of us, particularly as Black and European people, we're not even given that per se. We're given symbolism. We're given things that make us feel happy and feel good, and that's enough for us because that is part of our conditioning, our brainwashing, okay, our false sense of who we are as a people who will accept words and gestures over actual monetary things that will make our lives better. Okay? And this is why, when it comes to every election cycle, you will see they will put on television uh, rap artists to try to make it seem like they are the leaders of the black community, but they're not. Um, or pimps in the pulpit, okay, who don't speak about the truth, who don't speak against the government because the government gives them money to stay out of certain discussions or certain political arena, and they would much rather take the money as opposed to uh, freeing the minds of their people, okay, or of their congregation, okay. So this is what we have, and when it comes to white Americans, again, brainwashed into ignorance, brainwashed into a sense of feeling uh, superior to other groups, right? And the vast amount of privilege that comes with that. Now, a lot of white people, particularly poor white people, will say, "Well, I'm not privileged; I'm poor." But I tell you what, if you ask them, okay, would they rather change place with a black person, even if that black person was wealthy? They'll tell you no. They will straight up tell you no, because they know how black people are treated, and they don't want to be treated like that. So they will literally say no. They just recently did a study in which they ask white people, right? Would you rather uh, live in a? Would you? Okay, they said I think. Would you rather be black and live in a white community seeking help, right? Or would you be white living in a black community seeking help and within that community, right? And what did you think that they choose? They did not choose them being black, living in a white community, seeking help within that community. They choose to be white, living in a black community, seeking help within that community. Now, Jane Elliott did an experiment like that many years ago, okay, in which again, white people show that, you know, they would not be black under any wish to be black under any circumstance. So it goes to show you that white people in America know exactly how black people are treated. So when they act ignorant to that fact, they're just staying on code. All right. So just wanted to say that because I think it's important that uh, for us as black people, we need to come to the realization and the truth and see things for what it is and not what we hope it could be or wish it could be, right? And I can't speak for white people or any other group of people, but I understand this, right? There will come a time when, and it's happening already, with those that are in power, okay, is going to turn their back on you because you know why? They consider themselves different, even from middle class and poor white people. You recently you start to see police officers who are on a power trip will assault even white people, even white kids, right? So it's again, it's the conditioning, right? Pretty soon, these people, particularly those in law enforcement, the power becomes more important than their skin color, right? In which they identified and which they know they have privilege because of it. Okay, and this is what we call the creation of the hyper dark triad personality type. All right, where it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that they're in their minds, they feel or believe that they have unlimited power. And so now, no one, if they think you're disrespecting them, okay, it doesn't matter if you're white or black, Asian, what have you, they will exert their power over you in the most violent way. Okay? See, right now, the majority is just on black people, but it's going to get to that point. So, white people need to have a change of mindset, okay, when it comes to how they treat and view black people. Because I guarantee you, there will come a day, and it's happening now also, where you have white people asking black people to solve the problem of racism. No, black people can't solve the problem of racism. Racism is a white uh, created systematic structure, and so white people will have to be the one to eliminate it, right? But you're not going to, because that privilege that is afforded to you is more important than treating other groups of people, particularly black people, as equal. But there will come a time when they will turn on you, those in power, because they will no longer need you to be a buffer or defense. Okay, and we see that with the rise of artificial intelligence, also robotics replacing workers. So you need to pay attention to these things. All right, which brings us to today topic, which is a lot. It is having knowledge, gaining knowledge, not just about history, but about what's going on today, particularly with technology and particularly with our government. Okay? So I also want to touch on how, uh, when people say, particularly Caucasian people say, I don't understand why people around the world hate America or Americans. I'm going to show you why. Because the United States government have interfered with other countries' uh, interests, right? And mostly democratically elected countries. And why do they interfere? Because they are in bed with corporate America. And so when corporations have companies in other countries, and those countries have laws, right, to protect their citizens, their people, from foreign corporate greed, what do? They fund rebellions, they fund assassinations of democratically elected presidents, and install puppets who turn and brutalize their citizens. We see it happen in South America, and we're seeing it happen in Afghanistan, also Iraq. So understand why. Okay? But understand that they will use those uh, events and the emotions of people within other countries who the United States have bombed, has violated their rights, have assassinated their leaders. And they will say, well, we need to have major national security because there are those outside the United States who want to harm us. But they make it seem like those people have no reason, right? Somehow they just wake up one day and say, "Hey, Uh, you know what? I hate the United States, and I want to harm Americans and harm the United States. And when I hear those things, particularly when I hear Caucasian people say those things about they don't understand why people from other countries hate Americans. It's you want to know why? Because in the United States, right, particularly us as Black people, the way we are treated by this racist system and by the vast majority of Caucasians who are racist, but they have taught us to love them, right? So they'll say, well, we've done all of this stuff to Black people and they love us. Okay? So why isn't that we can bomb other countries and they don't love us the same way? Why isn't our propaganda working? Again, it is because they're outside the United States. They're also influenced by their neighboring countries. They also are educated differently. They also have their leaders have, particularly those that are democratically elected, uh, have more of a vested interest in seeing the vast majority of their people uh, do well, do good. Okay, that's unlike here in the United States, where the government vested interest is in corporations, is in the wealthy. So it doesn't matter who we vote for, be it Republican or Democrat, and particularly as Black people. Either one that wins elections or have the majority within the government doesn't really matter to us because uh, our vested interest is not supported. Simple as that. And I'm just speaking the truth. Something that a lot of us are afraid to do because, we think that we have too much to lose. We live a little bit comfortable in others, so it's okay. I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut. And this is why I have respect for those of us who speak the truth, who stand up and say, this is wrong. Our government should not be doing this. Because if our government is truly elected by the people and the government is for the people, then the condition that the vast majority of Americans live in, whether white or Black, would be significantly better. But it is not. Okay? Uh, we have a class system that is masquerading as a uh, we have a caste system, CASTE, masquerading as a class system. Okay? So we got to understand that, right? So there's a lot of things I want to discuss because, again, it all comes together in what I term is the basic uh, dumbing down of Americans and the use of propaganda, the use of the military, the use of technology to create a certain mentality within the populace in which uh, government can do whatever they want to do to its citizens as well as non citizens and have us be okay with it. And it shouldn't be okay. It should never be okay. Particularly when, if it's being done to them, they start passing laws and changing laws, right? So that it wouldn't happen to them. But why is it okay that they feel that it should be done to the majority of Americans, okay, and those living within the United States. It's that, like I said, I love that movie with Will Smith, where you have uh, a head in the NSA who think it's okay to murder a senator, to target an individual, right? To destroy that individual life, frame that individual for murder. And we thinking that, oh, this is a great movie, But these things happen in real life. I'm gonna give you an example. Go and um, look up Michael Haston. Now they didn't frame him for murder, but they targeted him. Okay, Michael Haston, who was an investigative journalist. And shout out to all the investigative journalists out there, though there are very few today, and there's a reason why there are very few investigative journalism and journalists, is because they have seen and they know what comes with exposing government corruption, that it can mean their loss of life, loss of career, being false negative propaganda being spread about them, being targeted by government cults, created cults, operating in secrecy and engaging in covert and psychological operation against targeted uh, individual or targeted victims. Okay, so I was on YouTube today, and I was watching the video, and then after that video came up, finish Democracy Now uh, came on. Okay, and they were talking about a secret death squad in Afghanistan. Okay, secretive death squad. So I'm like, wait a minute.
Mossad will do
Are they
anything.
for real?
Mossad
Okay,
had.
let me
This is Democracy Now!
Let me just get to it. And immediately I was like, okay, I gotta do a video. I have to do a video. And then it started coming to me about all the other things that the U.S. Government and its security agency, its military, have been engaging in the past, that they're still doing today. But there is no public outrage, no public outcry. So, what do you think that says to people in other countries who our military, our government, are operating clandestinely, killing innocent civilians, what do you think those people will begin to feel in those countries towards the United States or American citizens? Okay? They're going to say, hey, Americans support what this government is doing. But we never stop and think and say to ourselves, what if a country have done this to us or is doing this to us? How would we feel? How would we feel? And as I'm doing this video, they like to do the spitting sound. I mean, I guess, they want my DNA. They already have it. I'm not fooled by what it is that they're doing. They already have it. We're going to talk about that. This is why I document, my targeting. Right? Because those of us who speak the truth, those of us who are in are non-consensual human experimentation victims, right? They want us to be silent, right? And because some of us have chosen not to be silent, they have to get rid of us. They can't have us in the public eye, uh, saying what we're saying, that we are victims of non-consensual human experimentation, that we are victims of directed energy weapons being used on us, not just to harm us, but to control us and control the people around us. Because again, they don't think that people know about these things, about these technologies, when they have been working on these things for a decade. They're now fully developed and fully functional. And this is why they use psychiatry to discredit us. This is why they use psychiatry, psychological operation, to uh, destroy our rational mind, to have us thinking and believing irrationally and irrational things. Okay. And as much as those of us who fight back and try to think in a logical manner, we will still think illogically because, again, of the damage done to our psychology or to our psyche. Okay. And their attempt to try to fix the damage and using law enforcement as a threat. And I'm going to give you guys an example. Every time I put something down and I forget it and I'm looking for it, they will use the police siren. And that even happened today, right? Go in the shower, looking for my clothes to put on, and I don't remember where I put it. And it was on the top shelf, and I'm like looking like, where the heck did I put my clothes? And as I'm saying this to myself, I'm speaking to myself now, not my inner voice, but whispering to myself. Uh, Start hearing the police sirens, and I just said to myself, I don't care how many times you want to use the police sirens. If I don't remember, I don't remember. You can't force me to remember by using the police sirens to threaten me. But this is what they do because, again, these dog triad personality types, they will always try to avoid accountability. And we see that within those who are in the security agencies, those who are in the military, when they commit crimes against the people or people of other countries, there is zero accountability. And usually the accountability is put on those that are under their command. So they get away with, whatever it is that they've done. But because they gave a command to somebody who is their subordinate, that individual or those individuals are the ones who are held responsible. All right. So let's go through some history. Okay. And a lot of times you guys will see me go to media outlets outside of the United States because most media outlets in the United States are government controlled. Okay. And so when you look at media outlets outside the United States, who the vast majority of their journalists are independent, and they truly do investigative journalism, okay, as opposed to those here in the United States. Not to say all journalists in the United States do not uh, investigate the truth, but because they understand the great cost of speaking the truth, they tend not to. Right. And I brought up Michael Hastings for a reason because, uh, he wrote a book called The Runaway, not really a book, but an article called The Runaway Generals. And he also reported on the U.S. military PSYOP division running psychological operation on U.S. congressmen and senators to increase the military budget using coercive persuasion. And I always say, look at each year, the increase in the military budget at a point right now where it is almost $1 trillion. This is why he was killed. Okay? And so what happened when your government kills one of its citizens who is an investigative reporter? What do you think other investigative journalists would do? Right? They will stop going after stories about government corruption, particularly within the military and the security agencies, or they will do the investigative journalism and it wouldn't be complete, and they would give it to outside news agencies to report on what's going on. And that's sad. That is very, very sad. Okay? Because we should rely on the media to give us the truth. Okay? Not the version of the truth that is being fed to the media by those within the security agencies and within the government, but to be truly independent. But we know that that's not the case. Okay? So um let's see here. Let me All right. So here is the Guardian. Okay. This is a publication that is in the United Kingdom, and they do more investigative journalism than any news media outlet in the United States put together. Okay? So this article is called Operation Condor, the Cold War conspiracy that terrorized South America. During the 1970s, and 80s, 8 US backed military dictatorships jointly plotted the cross border kidnap, torture, rape, and murder of hundreds of their political opponents. Now, some of their perpetrators are finally facing justice. Really? Now, right? The last time Anatole Lara Betty saw his parents, he was 4 years old. It was 26th of September 1976, the day after his birthday. He remembered the shootout, the bright flashes of gunfire, and the sight of his father laying on the ground, mortally wounded, outside their home in a suburb of Buenos Aires, Argentina, with his mother lying beside him. Then Lara Betty remembers being taken away by armed police along with his 18-month-old sister, Victoria Eva. Now imagine this: a 4-year-old child, along with his 18-month-old sister, whose parents were wounded, mortally wounded. His father was, right? And his mother, I guess, also. Uh, they became prisoners, right? The two children became prisoners. At first, they were held in a grimy car repair garage that had been turned into a clandestine torture center that was in another part of Buenos Aires, the city that their parents had moved to in June 1973, joining thousands of left-wing militant and former guerrilla fleeing a military coup in the native Uruguay. The following month in October 1976, Anatoly and Victoria Eva were taken to Montevideo, the capital of Uruguay, and held at the military intelligence headquarters a few days before Christmas. They were flown to a third country, Chile, in a small aircraft that climbed high above the Indies. Larabetti remembered looking down on the snowy peaks from the plane. Young children do not usually make epic journey through three countries in as many months without parents or relative. The closest thing they had to a family was a jailer known as Aunt Monica. It was probably Aunt Monica who abandoned them in a large square, the Plaza O'Higgins, in a Chilean port city of Valparaiso on the 22nd December 1976. Witness recalled two young, well dressed children stepping out of a black car with tinted windows. Larabetti wandered around the square, hand in hand with his sister, until the owner of the merry-go-round spotted them. He invited them to sit on the ride, expecting some panicked parents to appear, looking for their lost children, but nobody came, so he called the local police. No one could understand how two children, whose accent marked them as foreign, had got there. It was as if they had dropped from the sky. Anatoly was too young to make sense of what had happened. How does a 4-year old find himself in Chile? Explain that he does not know where he is, that he lives in Argentina, but is really Uruguayan. All he knew was that he was in a strange place where people spoke his language in a different way. The next day, the children were taken to an orphanage, and from there they were sent to separate foster homes. After a few months, they had a stroke of luck. A dental surgeon and his wife wanted to adopt. And when the magistrate in charge of the children asked the surgeon which sibling he wanted, he said both. He said that we had to come together because we were brothers and sisters. Now imagine that. Imagine that. These dictators were put in place by our own government who brutalize their citizens. Okay? On the behest of the United States government, its security agencies, and also American corporations. Okay? And if you don't believe me, I'm not going to research that right now. But if you go and do a Google search, the Banana Republic, how, right? I think it was Chiquita Banana, when the people of, I forgot what country it was in South America, but they had elected their president. Okay? And he began to nationalize the natural resources of that country. And one of the American corporation, who is the owner of Chiquita Banana, asked the CIA to intervene. Okay? And what did the CIA do? Funded a coup, overthrew the democratic elected president chosen by the people, and installed a puppet regime that brutalized the people. And we think that these things are the past. Now, I did not even want to uh, hark on this part right here, but imagine the mindset, right, of people who would place young children in facilities created for torture and who would fly these children to another country, drop them off in a square, and leave. And, we in America would say, oh, these people are evil, you know, but who put these people in power? Right? Who put these people in power that they're able to do these things? Okay? And it is our government and the security agencies that put those people in power. And you see, Americans, particularly white Americans, love to say, oh, that's in the past. Let's move on. It's easy for them to say, right? Because their lives have not been upended. Their parents have not been murdered. Their siblings have not been murdered or severely injured. They didn't have their country suffered decades of war, mass killing, secret killing, all at the behest of the United States government and the security agencies. See, the reason why I'm so passionate about these things is because, again, when you experience things that is so heinous, and when you understand how society, people within the society, can be conditioned to not only feel no sort of empathy or remorse, but actually participate in these crimes, okay, I feel it is my duty to do what I'm doing, to make people understand that it is wrong under any circumstance. Okay? And those within our government, they know it is wrong, but they are shielded because of the position that they're in. Okay? So, uh, what? Well, let me just see here. What Lara Betty wants people to know is that his family were victims of one of the 20th century's most sinister international state terror network. It was called Operation Condor, after the broad winged vulture that soared above the Andes. Imagine that. The reason why they call it Operation Condor. And what do we know condors do? Right? Since they're vultures, right? What do we know that they do? So when they come up with these terms, it is very well sought out. It gives you an insight into their psyche. Okay? So and it joined 8 South American military dictatorship: Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Bolivia, Paraguay, Brazil, Peru, and Ecuador into a single network that covered 4/5 of the continent. It has taken decades to fully expose this system, which enabled governments to send death squads on to each other territory to kidnap, murder, and torture enemies, real or suspected, among their immigrant and exile communities. Condor effectively integrated and expanded the state terror unleashed across South America during the Cold War. After successive white ring media coups, often, listen to this, encouraged by the US, erased democracy across the continent, Condor was the most complex and sophisticated element of a broad phenomenon in which tens of thousands of people across South America were murdered or disappeared by military government in the 1970s and 80s. Okay? You see, we don't quite understand that these things happen here in the United States also. Particularly being a black person, if you learn proper history of the United States, true history of the United States, and its clandestine, overt, and covert war against black people on many levels. If we look at the Black Panther Party, the assassination of 19 I believe he was 19-year-old Fred Hampton by the Chicago Police Department, who conspired along with the FBI, right, to assassinate a young black man, just as they conspired to assassinate Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. How they dropped bombs on Tulsa, Oklahoma. How they dropped bombs on the movement in uh, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So those things happen here in the United States, as well as other things that I'm not even going to discuss in this video because again, it's a lot. But these people, again, always escape accountability because of the position that they're in that shields them from this. So the United States and its government, security agencies, have created havoc in many countries. And again, this article talks about things that happened during the 70s and the 80s. And so when we see our government get on stage, particularly in the UN, and talk about other countries, while they themselves are doing the same thing in secret, then what does that make America and its government? It makes them hypocrites. It makes us hypocrites. The American people, it makes us hypocrites also. Because we like to say we believe in human rights, we believe in civil rights. But we have no clue of human rights, of civil rights, because we accept the word of our government even when we know that they're lying, because we are too brainwashed, too conditioned to see better, to think beyond our circle. Okay? So, again, let's fast forward to today. That's not what I wanted to. and I have a lot of documents I have open. Here we go. No, I didn't click on that. Okay, but thank you for clicking on the tab for me. Just to show you how confident they are that they think uh, that they can, even when I'm recording this, that they're able to click on the tab that I didn't click on, just so you guys can see. Because again, I was looking for this very article. So they have their false sense of confidence also. Okay, this is called Military Night Raids by Lindsay Billen. On the December 9th in 2018, Mazala was jolt awakened by a shuddering wave of noise that rattled her family's small mud house. A trio of helicopters, so unfamiliar that she had no words for them, rapidly descend, kicking up clouds of dust that shimmered in their blinding lights. Men wearing desert camouflage and black masks flooded into the house, correlating, corralling her two sons and forcing them out the door. Mazala watched as the gunmen questioned Safilua, not sure if I'm saying that correctly. I apologize for not pronouncing these names properly, but I'll do my best. Uh, Safilua, 28, and 20-year-old Sabir, before roughly pinning them against a courtyard wall. Then, ignoring their frantic protests of innocence, the masked men put guns to the back of her son's head. One shot, two, then a third. Her youngest, the quiet gentleman, was still alive after the first bullet. Razala told me, so they shot him again. Her story finished. Mazala started to. She stared at me. Sorry, me getting ahead of myself here. Mazala stared at me intently, as if I could somehow explain the loss of her only family. We were in the dim confines of her home, a sliver of light leaking from the lone window above her. She rubbed at the corner of her eyes, her forehead seized by a pulsing vein. The voice of her sons used to fill their home, she told me. She had no photos of them, no money, and there was no one who would tell her, a widow in her 50s, why these men dropped out of the sky and killed her family, or acknowledge what she insists was a terrible mistake. But now there was me. I had ended up in Rhoda in the heart of uh, Nangarhar province while researching my own family story of loss in this desolated rural region in eastern Afghanistan. Mazala's neighbors had pressed me to meet her. I was a foreigner. I must be able to help. 3 months had passed since the raid. The neighbors believe it was the work of the feared Zero units, squadrons of U.S. trained Afghan Special Forces soldiers. Two more homes in the area were targeted that night, they said. Though no one else was killed, everyone acknowledged the Taliban had been in the area before. They were everywhere in Nangarhar province, but Mazala's sons, they were just farmers, the neighbor told me. That trip was the first time I've heard of the secretive units, which I've soon learned were funded, trained, and armed by the CIA to go after targets believed to be a threat to the United States. There was something else. The Afghan soldiers weren't alone on the raid. U.S. Special Operations Forces soldiers working with the CIA often joined them. It was a classified war, I'd, I'd later discovered. But the lines of accountability so obscured that no one had to answer publicly for operations that went wrong. Back in Kabul, I tried to continue my personal hunt, but Mazala's story had changed the trajectory of my journey. Her words and her face, with its deep set wrinkles that mirrored the unforgiving landscape, lingered in my thoughts. Who were these soldiers? And what were they doing in remote farming villages in Afghanistan, executing young men under the cover of night? Did anyone know why they were killed? As a journalist, I knew that Afghanistan's story was most often told by outsiders, by reporters with little cause to explore barren corners like Rodat. Far from the world's eyes, this story felt like it was being buried in real time. It was clear no one would be coming to question what happened that night or to relieve Mazola's torment. Mazola's son's lives, it seems, were being shrugged. Uh, Mazola's son's lives, it seems, were being shrugged away without acknowledgement or investigation, disappearing into the United States' long war on Afghanistan. Now, didn't the United States pull out of Afghanistan? Okay, isn't the Taliban the rulers of that country now? Just some questions that you should be asking yourself. Also, why did the United States, when the United States military, I should say, when they pulled out of Afghanistan, why did they leave thousands of weapons of tech, such as night goggle glasses, all these things? Why did they do that? What was the reason? It's. I mean, we will all know that these weapons and whatever technology they left behind would end up in the hands of the Taliban, but not also the Taliban, but also the Afghan people. See, I want you to understand how these people move, their mindset, in order to justify the mass killing of human beings under the guise of national security. But it's also a training exercise. Because you see, when you have a military, right, it is not just good enough to have training in which looks like real warfare, but it isn't, right? It's fake. So how do you get your soldiers to uh, turn off their moral compass when it comes to being in war and killing other human beings? Also, how do you train death squads in countries in which United States military and security agencies operate in? And how do you justify the mass killings of those countries' civilians? And on top of that, it is done in secrecy. Okay, covered up by uh, media within the United States to shield those within the government, within the security agencies, within the military of mass murder. And it's they're so used to it that it's nothing to them. They can go to sleep with their eyes closed, feeling safe and secure, right? Because billions of dollars are spent to keep them secure. Didn't we have the Nuremberg trial that talks about human rights, people's civil rights? When Farrakhan says the United States have no moral authority to dictate to other countries about morality, he was absolutely correct. And I may get a hate for a lot of this stuff that I'm saying, but it's the truth. And we know how they've conditioned us to hate the truth. So we shouldn't be asking ourselves, how is it that people outside the United States want to do the United States and its citizens harm? This is why. So when Jeremiah Wright says the chicken can home to roost, as he's talking about, I think it was what happened with 9/11, right? He didn't mean that in a disrespectful way. He was saying that our government, the United States government, its military, its security agencies have committed atrocities around the world. And in their mind, they believe that somehow they wouldn't create enemies. A father seeing his family killed because our government targets some low level so called terrorists. So they targeted one person, right? And created hundreds of casualties, or tens of casualties. And they're okay with that. But somehow they don't believe that friends, family members, loved ones don't have the right to retaliate. But they will retaliate if someone was to do the same thing, our country was to do the same thing right here in the United States. So when I always talk about the dark triad personality types, now you understand why. As I write this story, I'm sorry, as I write this today, America's war in Afghanistan is already being co signed to history, pushed to the world consciousness by humanity's latest round of inhumanity. But there are lessons to be learned from the West's failure in Afghanistan. Other reporters, notably at the New York Times, have documented the cover up of casualties, which I just talked about, right? Because they'll say, oh, they're always going to be casualties of war. But how do you justify drone striking one individual while you kill hundreds, but yet somehow in their mind it's justified? And let me say this: that as a black person, one of the biggest disappointment that I have as a black person was the fact that we had a black president, okay, who carried out some of the most extrajudicial killings and assassinations of innocent civilians, more so than George W. Bush ever did. So when we look back and history, I want you to understand that as a black person, that I know what I'm talking about. Okay? When we go back and look history, years from now, decades from now, it will be a black man's face as the image of a president of the United States who committed the most extrajudicial killing on the soil of other countries, other sovereignties. It wouldn't be a white person, okay? See, I understand their mentality very well, and they hate the fact that I understand it. And whenever I say I understand, I hear this, just like I just did. Or whenever I say I can see the conditioning, I hear that. Whenever I say that when I think back, or I think, or I'm thinking, I hear this. This isn't coincidental. Because we are conditioned into this mindset of not being able to think. But those of us who have the ability to think are awakened consciously. What do you think we experience? We experience the reality, the truth, that America is a repressive country. America is the same repressive country that they accuse China of being, North Korea of being. But it is because we live under the guise of democracy, which is an illusion that the majority of us fail to see the truth. It is the social conditioning, the brainwashing of an entire country, an entire society. And it has been done before. Okay? So, this story is a deep look inside what happened, excuse me, after America embraced the strategy of night raids. Now, let's shift this for a moment. When you look within black communities, communities in which black people live, what do we see an abundance of from law enforcement? We see night raids. Quick, brutal. Pointing guns at children heads as young as 2 and 3. Dragging black women out of their home naked They don't even have the decency to allow black women to put on decent clothing before they drag her out the house or him out the house. We see they breaking into people's home, black people's home, okay, startling them and shooting them without giving them any chance to comply. Okay? And you see, they don't want me talking about this because, again, this country, I shouldn't say this country, but the people that are in charge, the people that are running the military, the people that are running the security agencies, they are of the dark triad personality types. Those that are in charge of the police system in the United States, they are of the dark triad personality types. We know they're hell racist. They're hella racist. Okay? So we may not in the United States have the amount of mass killing, mass murder of civilians, but we have quite a few at the hands of white racist police murdering black people. So I, for one, cannot and will not stay silent, cannot and will not be numbed by what our government its security agencies are doing overseas to other countries, to other civilians who live in other countries. Okay? Because what these people will do is to create situations in which they can commit mass murder and get away with it. Like I said, just think about it. Why did they leave all this military hardware in Afghanistan? Why? Okay. Where was I? Okay, so this story is a deep look inside what happened after America embraced of the strategy of night raids. Quick, brutal operation that went wrong far more often than the U.S. has acknowledged. Of course, they don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to accept accountability. As one U.S. Army Ranger ruefully told me after the Taliban triumph last year, you go on night raids, make more enemies, then you got to go on more night raids for the more enemies you now have to kill. Do you understand that? Let me read that again. Okay? Because this put things in a perspective that I hope you understand. As one U.S. Army Ranger ruefully told me after the Taliban's triumph last year, see, this is why they left tons of military hardware, weapons in Afghanistan. So they can have the excuse to do what they're doing. All right? So he says, you go on you go on night raids, make more enemies, then you got to go on more night raids for the more enemies you now have to kill. Okay? So I'm not going to get on part two or read part two of this. You guys can read this yourself. It's at propublica.org. All right. The title is Military, the Night Raids. Okay. Now, again, I said there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to talk about everything. But it's important that we understand what's going on. It's important that we expose these things, all right? And I always applaud these journalists or whistleblower for speaking the truth. Because the one thing they hate, those that are in power, particularly those who are using their position, right, to satisfy their thirst for blood, their thirst for power, these maniacal, psychopathic, sociopathic, dark triad personality types who enjoy wreaking havoc, destroying people's lives while they live comfortably in their homes with their families, while they're destroying, killing families abroad, even here in the United States. When is it going to end? And as long as they keep us dumbed down, uneducated, patriotic, to the sense where we turn blind to the atrocity that they've committed and continue to commit, one day we're going to wake up to a world where when we travel outside the United States, they are going to be serious repercussion because of what our government have done and continue to do. And you see, they think because they've developed technology based on microwave and radio wave frequency to control people's mind, to create new personalities, that it's going to protect them. But they know, and I know, that when we experience trauma, all that conditioning goes out the window. Okay? All right. Meanwhile, here in the United States, the CIA has been conducting mass surveillance in the US with minimum oversight. And the program's uncovering is bad news for big tech. Okay? So, what is the purpose of the CIA? Right? What is the purpose of the CIA? Now, we know the CIA, since its inception, cannot conduct operations, whether it be military operation, whether it be investigative operations on U.S. soil. Okay, the CIA is a international, or its duties is to operate internationally outside of the United States to protect America and its citizens, those living here in the United States. But we see from Facebook, when you look at the technicians, when you look at the CEOs, the vast majority of them are ex CIA agents, ex CIA technicians that work in Facebook. So it doesn't surprise me, particularly how they silence us, particularly us black people. I'm speaking the truth. It doesn't surprise me that Facebook has engaged in psychological experimentation on its users. And it doesn't surprise me that the United States Congress have not reined in on Facebook and the damage it has done to the American public. And not just the American public, but around the world. Okay? So, the Central Intelligence Agency has been carrying out a mass surveillance program on American soil, according to documents declassified at the request of two U.S. senators. Okay? Um, okay, wait, I think I had opened up another. Let's see here. Are you going to help me out? Oh, once was enough. Okay. All right, let's do this. Let me do this so I can find the other document on this. Okay. Close that. Okay. All right, let's get on with it. So, we need answers about the CIA mass surveillance. The Central Intelligence Agency has been collecting Americans' private data without any oversight or even the minimum legal safeguard that apply to the NSA and FBI, an unconstitutional affront to our civil liberties. Civil liberties. Okay, so again, this article was written February 11, 2022. That's recent. That's not, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. When Edward Snowden revelations on are revealed that the NSA was doing the same thing. Okay? But I want you to, I want to show you how this is a top down belief system. Because you see, it starts at the Central Intelligence Agency, the NSA, then the FBI, then state and local law enforcement agencies. So again, they are very well shielded in their crimes against American citizens and those living here in the United States. It isn't something that you know people make up when we say these things. Here's proof. Okay? So, according to a declassified report released yesterday by the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, the CIA surveillance program is reminiscent of the mass surveillance programs conducted by the NSA. Though the detailed release thus far paints a disturbing picture of potential wide scale violations of people's privacy. To start, the CIA program has apparently been conducted outside the statutory reforms and oversight of the intelligence community instituted by revelations by Edward Snowden in 2013. Okay, so imagine this. Edward Snowden, who was an American legend, who is an American patriot, a true American patriot, a true believer in democracy, a true believer in the oath that he took, right, to protect America and Americans from its enemies, domestic and foreign, those within the government, its security agencies, and its enforcement agencies, a true patriot, not the false, the fake ones that claim patriotism and commit crimes in the name of patriotism, that don't believe in democracy, okay, but believe in doing whatever they want under the guise of democracy for their own interests or the interests of corporate America, violating the rights of American citizens and those living within the United States, and will get on national security platforms, get on news media platforms, and talk about how great democracy is in America, while trying to demonize people like great Americans, I should say, like Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, and others, William Benny, also, and I forgot the the name of the Black Americans, the true one of the true patriots of America. Uh, I forgot his name, who also blew the whistle on the CIA and its illegal activities. Okay, so to start, I think I just read that. All right, so the newly declassified CIA data collection program is carried out in conjunction with Executive Order 12 33.3 and is therefore subject to even less oversight than the woefully undersupervised NSA surveillance program subject to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. So I want you to understand what it is that they do. They operate outside of the law that they put in place to say, look, we have these laws in place, we have these statutes in place, right? That prevents those within the uh, leadership of these agencies, and we have whistleblower laws and whistleblower protection, which we know is bullshit. It's all lies. Okay, we know this. We're not surprised. At least I hope those of us who are able to think beyond what they feed us understand. Because again, the evidence is there. Every whistleblower went to the department head to file grievance, to say, hey, this person is doing this and this is wrong. What has happened to them? Lost their job, life is destroyed, have the FBI uh, claim false charges or put false charges on them, break into their home, destroy their marriages, destroy their relationships, right? Whitelisted them or whiteballed them. Okay, when I say whitelisted, it's, it is the true uh, wording for what they would say blackballed. But remember, it's not black people don't are not in these positions doing these things, okay? And if they are in position doing these things, they've been so conditioned, so brainwashed that it doesn't matter what they do or say, that condition is going to carry it out, right? And that condition is going to be against their very own people, even themselves. And I'll give you a good example of this. Justice Clarence Thomas. Here's a black man who have done everything since being elected on the Supreme Court bench to curtail civil rights given to black people. Okay? So you can't tell me brainwashing doesn't work. You look at the increase military in the military budget since the expose by Michael Hastings on the military using psyops against U.S. senators and congressmen to increase the military budget. The evidence speaks for itself, ladies and gentlemen. That now the military budget is almost $1 trillion. Okay? The who's, what, whys, and how of this semi disclosed CIA program are still unknown. And the public deserve the right to know exactly what damage has been done. Senator Ron Wyden and Martin Heinrich are already pressing for the release of even more information. In a particularly redacted letter, redacted letter sent to the Director of National Intelligence and the CIA Director on April 13, 2021, the senators have called for the public release of the full reports about the CIA surveillance, which remain classified, of course. Why is it that U.S. senators cannot have the unredacted version of these programs? Okay, isn't senators and congressmen, aren't they the one that appoint CIA directors? Or is it the other way around? The senator's letter also demand answers about how the agency collect the data, what data is being collected, and the rules governing its storage and retention. Okay, so again, I want you to understand and have a clear understanding of the people that are running these agencies and their belief that they can do whatever they want to do, even when it's against the law, and that they can change the laws, they can change the policies at any time, or operate outside the laws, outside of the policies at any time, because they can. And there's no accountability, no punishment at all. But they will punish those and destroy the lives of Americans, true patriots, who expose the crimes that they have been committed. And you want to sit, and they want to get on television and talk about America being a democratic country. Yeah, you can sniff all you want. They are like, they used to do these sounds, but they'll cough also and all this other stuff. Police sirens, you know what I'm saying? Car honking. I've gotten so used to it, but at times when they step it up, it is nerve wracking. It really is. Okay? This is why.
Your mind. You must unlearn what you have learned.
Okay? Once you begin to do that, once you begin to see things as they are for what it is, a lot of the manipulation that they will try to do to you will no longer work. This is why they don't want us to think. Okay? They cannot have an informed society, a population that is able to think. Because when you can think, you're going to vote for people who is going to have your best interests. And let me tell you, as a black person, we do not vote for people who have our best interests at heart. We vote for people who have, even those that look like us, that will put other people' best interests only, okay? And have no interest in doing things to benefit us also, okay? Let's see here. I'm just looking at how long this video is. Okay, so like I said, there's a lot that I wanted to talk about, but I think this is going to be it here. I'm gonna do a part two on this because again, it is important. All right. So again, when they tell you that, oh, you know, uh, being able to implant a microchip in a person's brain, you know, and control them, that's sci-fi. That thing don't exist. I want you to understand that they've been able to do this for decades. It's nothing new. The lies that they tell, the secrets that they keep, even from congressional oversight, right? The very same Congress that appoints the directors of these agencies can't even have oversight. Why? Because of the fear. They know how powerful these agencies are. And they know that the people operating within these agencies, how they think, what they'll do. Okay, so with that being said, I will speak to you guys in the next video. Stay tuned for uh, part two on this. Because again, you know, we have to understand the truth. We have to get out of the matrix. Okay, we have to get out of the matrix. All right, it is totally important. And I know you guys see me looking to the side. I'm just looking at my other monitor to make sure that you know, this video is recording properly because they will sabotage it. You know, they can't help themselves. That's who they are. Criminals, crooks, psychopaths, sociopaths. And it's a shame that these are the people who we have in these agencies. But I guess you know what? Those types are the suited to do what it is that they're doing. But what gets me is that they feel totally justified in the mass killing of innocent civilians and the use of the term casualties of war as, you know, some word that they use every day with no connection to the loss of lives and the enemies that they will further create going forward. And what they're going to do. If every person in those countries begin to hate America, are they going to assassinate and kill all citizens of those countries? Because of the fear that those citizens will, you know, as Jeremiah Wright said, the chicken come home to roost? Or the chickens come home to roost? I don't understand how people can't see the madness in this. But when you create mass psychological illness within the society, within the populace, you can get away with anything, you know? And that's what they've done. All right. So, again, I'll talk to you guys in the next video.